Good evening, I'm Laura Lee.
And I'm Dan Wolf. Thanks for joining us. The BWCA was set aside in the 60s as one of the original 9 areas protected under the Wilderness Act.
Well, that protection is under attack in a new Senate bill.
Northern News Now's Kyrie Johnson joins us live in studio to break down this proposed change. Kyrie.
Yeah, Dan and Laura, in October, a federal bill called the Borderland Conservation Act was introduced. It would be implemented nationwide, which would have a potentially big impact on the boundary waters.
This proposed legislation is as ludicrous as it is brazen.
It's a common sentiment among those who live and work closest to the BWCA. And for this third-generation business owner, it's just another indicator of what they've already felt for years.
We're not being heard and we're not being represented. And that is frustrating for the people who live here. That is indicative of how out of touch the Republican lawmakers are with the people that they serve.
The Borderland Conservation Act was introduced by Republican Senator Mike Lee of Utah. It would give the Department of Homeland Security greater managing authority of the federal lands 100 miles inland of U.S. borders. That includes the ability for DHS to install roads and buildings, to have agents patrol the area, and to use equipment that has been banned in wilderness areas. Northeast Minnesota Congressman Pete Stauber says this bill will help reduce illegal immigration.
Criminals are like water. They're going to follow the path of least resistance. And we know now that we have areas of our northern border that we need to secure.
But activist groups like Save the Boundary Waters say that's false.
There is no credible evidence, demonstrating that people are migrating into the United States through the northern border and particularly through the boundary waters.
The community voicing serious concern over this bill and how it would impact their home.
Those of us who live here, this isn't something that's theoretical. It's not a philosophical discussion, right? Like it is in boardrooms. For us, this is everyday life.
That bill still is in early stages, and due to the government shutdown, it's been a slow process. Senator Lee is pushing for the bill to be passed before the end of the year, but is likely to face some opposition. Live in studio, Kyrie Johnson, Northern News Now.